Hi guys, my name is Ioannis Anifantakis. In this video, we're going to talk about Kotlin Multiplatform, and more specifically about how we can access code written directly in Swift from our Kotlin codebase. Now, Kotlin Multiplatform already supports interoperability for many Swift APIs and libraries, so you can access them directly from your Kotlin code. However, for anything that might have not been ported yet, or for code that you might already have in Swift and you just want to make use of it, this video is for you. We start by the declaration of a variable which we call input that simply holds the value 1. Then we have a composable that prints two lines, as you can see here from the line separator. The first line writes the word input plus our input, which is 1. You can see it both in iOS and Android. And then on the second line, we write the word output plus some value, which, as you can see, is slightly different for iOS and Android. So for the value that is printed here, we get it from a function which we call getNativeResponse. Now, as you can see, this is an expect function. And in case you don't already know that, we have the expect actual mechanism in Kotlin Multiplatform, which resembles a lot interfaces. Now, the expect is declared in the common source set, and the actual implementations happen in the platform source sets. So for the platform source set for Android of getNativeResponse, what we have here, okay, here is the actual where we actually get that input and add 10 to it. So here we have the 1 plus 10, 11. As you can already guess, for iOS, the actual is taking that input and adds 100 to it, and hence we have 101 as output. Now, let's assume that we want to take this function and write it in Swift. So our actual implementation calls Swift, and that's what we're going to do right now. Now, the way to do it is by declaring an interface. And that interface will be implemented in the Swift side, and we will be able to access it here from the Kotlin side. So let's start by declaring our interface. NativeResponseProvider. And what are we going to do in Swift? Well, actually, we're going to do just this function, okay? So let's take the stub of this function and put it here. Now we need to go to Xcode and create a class that will implement this interface with this function. So let's just do this. So now in Xcode, we're going to create this class that will implement this interface here. But before we do anything like that, we need first to build our application in order to see that new interface that was declared here. After we build our application and we know that we can have now access to this, let's create one new empty file. Let's call this iOS Native Response Provider. And now this class will just will be a class, okay, and it will implement the Native Response Provider interface. Now, as you will see, it cannot do it yet because in order to get access to the iOS source set of Kotlin, we need to make one small import, and that's import Compose app. By importing Compose app, we get access to the iOS counterpart. Now, we will create a function, get native response, and as you see, it will autofill it for us. Okay, as you see here, we expose it, but here it is treated as int32. Now, what we do, we just need to return our input plus 100, but this time it will be done from inside iOS. But we are not done yet, because as you can see in Kotlin side, we are still calling our concrete implementation of adding 100 to the input. Instead, we need to call this guy here, all right? And in order to get access to this code here, we need a reference, which we will expose through a variable as a late init var, a native response provider of type native response provider interface. Now, Here, instead of returning input plus 100, we will refer to whoever implements that interface for that variable, NativeResponseProvider dot get NativeResponseProvider, where we forward our input. And that's it for the Kotlin side. Now we need to go to Xcode and say that it is the iOS native response provider that we will refer to when we talk about this late init var. So it comes the time to initialize this late init var. So let's go to the iOS side. And before we do that, of course, let's command build in order to be able to see this new change here, this new addition, okay? And we will get a reference to this file and connect the iOS native response provider to that variable. To do that, of course, we said in order to get access to the iOS main source set, we need to import the Compose app. And now we will go here, and at the initialization of the iOS app, we will get a reference to this file. Now to get a reference to this file, we just write native response. And as you see, native response underscore iOS KT, it's this native response.ios.kt. So that's what we want. Now we refer to that file. And from that file, since we pressed build, okay, and we have the Compose app as imported, we can now see all the new changes, including this native response provider variable, which we will refer to. And as you see, it is here. So it will be our our iOS native response provider class. And now we pass this implementation of the native response provider interface to this variable. And to make it more prominent from our Swift source set, instead of returning 100, let's return 200 plus whatever comes. Let's test it, see what happens. And as you can see, it now returns 201, and we are actually done. If you like this video, please don't forget to thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks a lot. Bye.